Going on, everybody? AJ Shula here, going to give you guys a breakdown for UFC Vegas 29. Looking forward to this event. I have one bet posted. It's going to stay like that in all likelihood. And you can access that bet and breakdown for it at dailyfanmma.com on the official bet section, as well as betmma.tips /Anthony S364. One play posted. Going to look into Bellator after I get off this breakdown here, but hopefully more to come on that. Just wasn't the best card from a betting perspective, in my humble opinion. And got to stay disciplined, and that's just the way it is, right? So no need to force anything. There's plenty of spots down the line, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But as it pertains to this card, Dan Ige versus Korean Zombie Chan Sung Jung is going to be kicking us off, or excuse me, headlining the event. It's a decent card for fight night standards. Like I said, it might not be the best from a betting perspective, but I think that there's some potential fan-friendly fights in here, some fight of the night candidates, even with Danny Robertson, Tim Means off the card. Just think there's a lot of, opportunity here, even though we're just coming off just a great pay-per-view event. I mean, not every card is going to live up to that standard of UFC 263 that we just saw, but we got a UFC event nonetheless. It wasn't too long ago before we didn't think we'd have any UFC. So again, just a friendly reminder, it's good that we actually have a card to look forward to on a weekly basis. So without further ado, let's get into the first fight of the night. Lara Procopio taking on Casey O'Neill. I do like Procopio in the matchup. I think she's the better striker grappler here, and I think she's just far less green, and that's ultimately why I think she should be favored. O'Neill, don't get me wrong, she's a solid grappler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, but she still showed in that UFC debut. She's very green, was diving into Shannon Dobson's guard head first, basically, leaving her very vulnerable to head kicks. Even when she was closing her entries, she was just diving head first, just leaving her wide open to like a Muay Thai knee. Just very hittable on the feet is O'Neill, just doesn't move her head off the center line at all. Don't get me wrong, Procopio doesn't have great movement either. She proved in that UFC debut against Carol Hossa, very hittable, absorbed north of 170 significant strikes there. So she's there to be hit as well. However, I think that Procopio's higher pace, more variety as a striker, low kick, 1-2 combo. I think her defense and countering ability is better than O'Neill. I think she's a better grappler as well. And I do think that she will be able to get her hand raised and probably a fairly dominant or, clear win or fairly dominant from a grappling perspective, and then a clear win in the striking exchanges. So I'm going to side here with Lara Procopio. Next fight, moving on up here quickly, we got Joaquim Silva taking on Ricky Glenn, not Rick Glenn, Ricky. So it's tough to tell exactly where both these guys are at, right? They're just coming on big layoffs, and it's okay to not be sure or not exactly know, because at the end of the day, it's a guess, and I just got to be honest with myself, right? I can't pretend like I know exactly what we're going to get on both guys here, because we just don't. Due to the layoff circumstances, both guys are coming off fights where they just took a lot of damage. Joaquim, case of him, he got knocked out by Nasrat Haqparast. Even the fight prior to that against Jared Gordon, it was pretty one-sided beating up until Gordon gassed, hurt his knee in the the second round, and Joaquim was able to get a standing knockout there. And Rick Glenn, coming off a fairly one-sided loss to Kevin Aguilar, a fight where he got hurt in. Granted, he made it to the decision, but still not exactly a performance that aged particularly well. I do like Silva in the matchup because I think he's the better striker. I think he throws with more power. And while his takedown defense isn't good, it's probably good enough to keep the fight standing here. Glenn's never been a good offensive wrestler or defensive wrestler either. He's also very hittable on the feet. I think that Joaquim, while his durability isn't great, I don't think Glenn is a big power puncher by any means. The only guy we saw him hurt was Gavin Tucker. Beyond that, he hasn't shown to hurt really anybody with his hands. So I tend to think that the areas of weakness of Silva are not going to really come back to bite him here. Just think he's a better fighter here, and that's why I agree with him being the favorite. Next fight, Josh Parisian and taking on Roque Martinez. This is a fight where there's a massive size disparity here. We got 7-inch reach advantage in favor of Parisian and a 6-inch height advantage. He doesn't control range particularly well. He doesn't pop a consistent jab. And it's also pretty mind-boggling to me that all this dude literally threw prior to his UFC debut against Parker Porter was kicks on the regional scene. And then that UFC debut, he barely threw any kicks. And it wasn't just like I'm strategically doing this so the guy can't catch a leg and take me down. He was doing that on the regional scene to guys that were actively trying to take him down and still successful. So it's all very weird. But as it pertains to this matchup, I think that Parisian is going to have success at range, even though he's not a great range fighter. Just throws more, diversity, like with his kicks, his straight punches. He's going to have the reach here. And it'll be on Roque here to close distance, force the pocket exchanges, and do damage to Parisian on the inside. Parisian is not a good defensive fighter, very hittable on the feet. We even learned in that UFC debut that he's got bad cardio. Granted, the fight was fought at a high pace, but it was how early he gassed. He gassed towards the end of round one. Martinez is the better technical striker, in my opinion, so it's all going to be dependent on ranges. At kicking range, I think it should be Parisian due to his better length, his higher pace, but up close, it should be Martinez because of his sharper technique and better boxing in the pocket and probably more pure punching power of the two. So as far as a prediction goes, I feel obligated to pick Parisian, but he's not a guy I feel confident, laying a chalk price on per se, even with all these advantages, because you just watch tape and the guy just does not leverage his attributes to the best of his abilities. So again, it's all fine and good to have these statistical metrics on paper that are favorable, but if you can't leverage them, not even to their full potential, but just to some capability whatsoever, it's just tough for me to back him. So I'm going to back him as pertains to a bet, but as pertains to a prediction, I'm going to side with Parisian here. Next fight, we've got Matthew Semmelsberger taking on Chaos Williams. Pretty interesting booking here. I'm pretty surprised that Semmelsberger is the underdog, considering I think he's the better fighter everywhere, but it's just a matter of, can Chaos Williams land the knockout? He got 2 quick knockouts in his first UFC fight, then his sophomore fight, and Semmelsberger has been dropped and knocked down in the past. So Semmelsberger can be hurt, but beyond that, if Chaos Williams does not find the knockout, I just think that Semmelsberger is better than him everywhere. I think he's a better technical striker. His straight punches are much better, technique-wise. He just, from the eye test, just consistently popping out a jab. He's got good boxing combos. He also fights at a much higher tempo, much higher pace. And I think he has better footwork than Chaos. I think that, even Chaos hasn't been knocked out. Semmelsberger's got some power himself. So Williams isn't exactly the only guy that has power in this matchup. And then Semmelsberger, I think, is the better wrestler and grappler here. I just think that Williams has shown pretty bad takedown defense. Just his last fight against Michel Pereira. Pereira took him down easily with a double leg. No resistance there whatsoever with Williams. Struggled to scramble up off of his back in the second takedown attempt. We even saw his get back taken there by Pereira at the end of round 2. I just think Semmelsberger is better than him everywhere. And it's just a matter of, can his chin hold up and can he avoid the knockout? And so I feel obligated to pick him as far as a prediction perspective, because I tend to side with the guys that have more paths to victory here rather than the one guy that just needs a knockout. And so I'm going to pick Semmelsberger to win. I'm going to pick him to win by decision. All right, Virna Jandiroba taking on Kanako Murata. We have Murata getting some love actually as a underdog. Pardon that. She is going to be, around plus 110, 5 dimes, minus 120 Jandiroba. I tend to agree with this fight being fairly competitive. It's a tough fight to call because, to have a clear read on where the odds should be, in my humble opinion, I would need to have a better read on what what Murata's takedown defense is like, and haven't really seen that. She comes from a strong wrestling base, but largely in all of her fights, she's the one going for takedowns and earning top control and that sort of thing. But Jandiroba, despite her coming from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu base, she's an excellent submission grappler. Is Jandiroba, in my opinion, the second best submission grappler in this weight class, first being Mackenzie Dern. And she's actually got good wrestling, in my opinion, dare I say. She's got good wrestling in the clinch at open space. She took Carla Esparza down. She took Mallory Martin down, 2 women that are solid wrestlers. So it's kind of a tricky matchup for Murata, because if this fight hits the ground, I think Jandiroba could put her in a lot of trouble. We saw Murata get her back taken on the regional scene. I've seen her get threatened from Emily Ducote's guard, deep submission attempts. And, with all due respect to those ladies, I think that Jandiroba is just a much better submission grappler than her. So this fight hits the ground, I think that Jandiroba could put Murata in trouble, but, Murata's the better wrestler on paper. She's a decent submission grappler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt. I also think she's a better striker. So it's a fight where I agree with Murata being, some action coming in on Murata. I think she probably wins the decision here. But again, it's not as if I can't see Jandiroba winning. This is a colossal step up in competition for Murata. I wouldn't be surprised if Jandiroba's too much for her too soon sort of thing. I'm siding with Murata because I think she's a better striker and better wrestler. But again, it's just a shot in the dark. I'm guessing here. There's not sufficient data to suggest what Murata's takedown defense is like. And that is a key element when it comes to predicting this fight with conviction, right? So I'm not going to blow smoke up anybody's ass. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys and transparent, and that's where I'm at. Not a fight that I have a great read on, but it's one I am going to make a prediction, and I'm going to side with Kanako Murata nonetheless. Nikolai Negumereanu taking on Alexa Camor. Look at that. I mean, I'm so bad with these name pronunciations usually, but I got that one off my tongue. Yeah, right. So, okay, we got 2 fighters that, are particularly untrustworthy from what we've seen in the UFC, right? Just, have been a bit underwhelming. Even in Camor's win against Justin Ledet was getting tagged up a bit there. Doesn't have good striking defense. He showed bad cardio in that fight. Both of these guys have flaws. Narimanu showed in that UFC debut takedown defense, a huge issue. Same with scrambling off of his back. He also showed that he's a poor striker. He got rocked there by Safarov a couple times. It just, how much confidence do I have in a guy after watching that just one-sided beating? And I know that Safarov grabbed the fence a bunch and that sort of thing, but beyond that, he just got his ass kicked from pillar to post. That's completely honest what happened, right? So I agree with Camara being the favorite just because we have, more evidence or more minutes of him looking decent in the UFC, even though he hasn't looked great. But Narimanu, maybe in this time off, he's improved a lot, 2 years off. Maybe it's been, just a complete transformation. But again, it's still a guess, right? If I were to back Narimanu, I would be guessing that he's significantly better than what he showed in that UFC debut. And we have seen incredible transformations before, but from a prediction standpoint, I like to do my best service of giving you guys the analysis of what I actually see rather than what I'm actually inferring, right? We can make educated guesses, but I feel like this is a huge leap, right? For me to assume that Narimanu is all of a sudden this great technical fighter with great wrestling and good cardio and good pace and that sort of thing. Maybe it happens, but there's no reason for me to assume that happens where I'm currently sitting right now. So opinions are always subject to change. I always get that. I'm always willing to stand by that. But as pertains right now, I agree with Camara being the favorite. Don't want to back him from a betting perspective at this line, but he's going to be my pick regardless. To start us off on the main card, we got Diego Lima and Matt Brown. We got Lima as a favorite, and I tend to agree with it. I just think that he's closer to his prime of the two. Matt Brown, a legend of the sport, but now he's 40 years old. He just did not look good in that last fight against Carlos Condit, where he was taken down, took damage, was controlled on his back, just did not look good from a wrestling or an athleticism, speed standpoints. He had that moment there against Miguel Baeza where he rocked him. But beyond that, he just hasn't looked great since, retiring against Diego Sanchez and then, choosing to come back and fight. He beat Ben Saunders, but Ben Saunders is another guy who's near the end of his career, right? So, and even in that fight, he struggled to pass Saunders' guard. He got put in submission attempts. It still wasn't a great performance despite a knockout there by Brown. So what this fight boils down to me is I just think that Lima just has more left in the tank. Brown could knock him out. Lima's been knocked down and knocked out plenty of times, even in his decision win against Court McGee, he was knocked down there because he was willing to brawl. He's not a great technical striker as Lima, just, will let you close distance on him, just doesn't have a lot of power to stifle fighters at distance. But that said, I still wouldn't be surprised to see him hurt Matt Brown because Brown's just taken so much damage over his career. He could be hurt to the body, to the chin. So it would be this huge, shock if I were to wake up on Sunday and I see in the headline that, Lima wins by knockout. Sort of thing. But, regardless, it's a hesitant pick, but he's going to be my prediction nonetheless, Diego Lima to win this fight. All right, next sign up, we got Wellington Turman taking on Bruno Silva. We got about a pick-em fight here, even odds, depending on what book you look at. Plus 100, you can see Turman here. And I agree with this action coming in on Turman. It's just really tough to trust Silva. I mean, he could, just like Narimanu, he could come out of this layoff looking great, but there's just no way for me to predict that that's exactly going to happen, right? It's just a guess, right? So he's coming in on a USADA suspension, hasn't fought in over 2 years as Silva, and the tape that I've seen, he's looked pretty susceptible as a defensive wrestler and grappler. I've seen him get taken down easily. I've seen him give up his back. I've seen him get submitted easily. And so Turman is a guy that I feel very hesitant about. He's coming off a knockout loss to Andrew Sanchez, where he just, the striking defense that he's always shown in the past is always shown to be liable, just very hittable off the counter, doesn't move his head off the center line. And, coming off his first knockout loss, you just never know how a guy's shin is going to hold up after that. After going so many fights of not getting knocked out, and then finally he does get knocked out, you never know if that durability is going to hold up going forward, especially against a guy like Sanchez, who prior to that fight really hadn't hurt anybody. He rocked, Ryan James, but beyond that, he's not a huge power puncher. He faced guys with some of the lesser durability in the UFC at the time he fought them, and he couldn't really seem to hurt him. So it's a concern, honestly, that I have for Turman, but he's going to be my prediction because he's much more tested. He's fought much more frequently than Silva, and I think he has got a clear path here with his wrestling and grappling. So Silva, he could win this fight on the feet by knockout, but I still don't think he's a great technical striker. I mean, he throws with power. He's got some kicks and some powerful hands, but, when he closes distance, he's often wild and sloppy, just overextending himself, just rushing at you like a madman, basically. So honestly, in theory, Turman could have some success on the feet, but if you're backing him, I wouldn't think you'd want him to. You want him to get this fight to the ground and pose his better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and win the fight that way, whether it's by submission or top control for at least 2 rounds. I feel like Wellington Turman is the correct prediction here, and that's why I'm picking him. Julian Erosa taking on Sungwoo Choi. I do like Choi in the matchup. Thing with Erosa, I know he's on a little bit of a winning streak here, but let's let's look at those fights, right? He went on to beat Sean Woodson by just kind of wearing him out with his pressure, his pace, getting in his face. But, in that fight, he was rocked by Woodson. He was rocked by Nate Landwehr last fight. It doesn't show up on the stat sheet, on the scoreboard, UFCstats.com. He didn't get knocked down officially, but he took a knee. He got rocked. And that's always been the issue with Erosa. He just begs you to hit him in striking exchanges, hands down, absorbs north of 5 significant strikes per minute. And Choi is also another long-rangey guy. So in theory, Erosa's hands down, hit me style isn't going to work as well here as it would against a shorter fighter with a shorter reach. And so I think Choi's the sharper striker. I think he's more durable, and I think he has enough power to hurt Erosa. Choi by knockout is going to be my prediction. If this fight goes to the ground, Erosa's a better submission grappler, but Erosa's never been a great offensive wrestler. Don't get me wrong, Choi's not a good defensive wrestler, but I tend to think that Erosa's unwillingness to wrestle, just fight kind of like a cocky fighter while the fight is standing, is just going to catch up to him here. I think Choi catches him with a right hand counter and knocks him out. So Sungwoo Choi is going to be my prediction. Marlon Vera taking on Davy Grant. We got Vera here as a favorite, and I agree with it. And here's the thing about Davy Grant is yes, he's gone on a winning streak here, but he hasn't exactly looked perfect in these fights, right? So let's start off from the top, right? He fought Grigory Popov, right? He took Popov down 3 times and won a split decision, right? But in that fight, he got tired of that fight. He got reversed a couple times, and Popov was able to put him in a submission. So even though it was a win on paper, it wasn't like this tidy ho-hum, 30-27 dominant performance by Grant. Then let's fast forward to the next fight, right? He fights Martin Day, a guy that he should be able to dominate on the ground with grappling. And even in that fight, he took Day down. He got him in a couple submission attempts, but Day was able to reverse him. Day rocked him in the first round because Grant is just so wild and sloppy when he closes distance, just wings hooks, leaving himself wide open to counters, drops his hands, chin is in the air. I mean, this is just things that on paper he's winning these fights, but he's still showing issues in his game. Next fight against Jonathan Martinez. Martinez drops him in the first round. Grant hangs on and is able to knock Martinez out in the second round, right? So again, he's winning these fights, but has he exactly looked spectacular at all 3 of them, right? I mean, it's just a different thing, right? And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. These are good wins. I'm happy that the guy won. But, when you look at Marlon Vera, guy's historically been very durable. I mean, he could be hurt with a big shot. Don't get me wrong. He got rocked by Guido Canetti. Vera's issues have mainly been starting slow. That's something that he's acknowledged in the past, and then he kind of picks up as the fight goes on. Vera, I think, has much better cardio here. I think he's more durable of the two, and I think he could hurt Grant while the fight is standing. And even, if this fight hits the ground, Vera's just a much better submission grappler. Look at Grant. Look at all of Grant's losses. They've all been by submission, right? So if this fight goes to the ground, I think Vera could put Grant in a lot of trouble, right? I think he could threaten him from his guard. I think he's a threat to sweep. In the top position, I think he could really dominate Grant here. So it might be, kind of exciting to see a big underdog that won the first fight. But at the same time, when I break it down stylistically, I just think that Grant has a lot of hurdles to overcome here to beat Vera. Again, maybe he knocks Vera out, but that seems unlikely considering Vera's great durability. I think Vera's a bigger knockout threat to hurt him. And then on the flip side, the wrestling path with Grant, it's okay, he could take Vera down, but Vera's going to try and sweep, scramble, that sort of thing. And that could tire Grant out, and Vera could take over down the stretch. He's always had great cardio. He runs north of 10 miles a day, whereas we've seen Grant tire out more than once, right? So, and the other thing we got to factor in is, and this is bantamweight, right? So this is where the age is pretty compelling. And, Grant is 35 years of age, at bantamweight, whereas Vera is 28. So you got one guy that's in his prime, in my opinion, and Vera, and then Grant looks like he's in his prime, but again, he's 35 years of age, right? So I just think that Vera has more upside. I think stylistically it's a decent fight for him. He's a finishing threat on the feet. He's a finishing threat on the ground. And I just feel like Grant has a lot of hurdles to overcome to win this fight. So I'm going to pick Marlon Vera here. I'm going to pick him to win inside the distance. Grateful Dude's in here. What's up, Grateful Dude? This should be a fun fight. I don't know which one you were talking about, man. I missed you. You were talking about this one. Okay, yeah, you were talking about this one because it was 3 minutes ago. Yeah, man, it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it, and I wish you nothing but the best, brother. Co-main event time, we got Alexei Oleinik taking on Sergey Spivak. I do agree with Spivak being the favorite, but I do have some hesitations about him. I mean, when you go back to the Marcin Tybura fight there, he gets thrown down by Tybura. Tybura takes his back, and Spivak really struggles to work up from getting taken down, right? So again, I'm siding with Spivak here. He's just much closer to his prime. He's a better boxer. If he wants to take Oleinik down, he can, because Oleinik has bad takedown defense. But I don't think that'll necessarily be in his best interest, considering Oleinik's elite submission grappling pedigree. But at the same time, I'm going to counter myself here with, look at Derek Lewis, right? Derek Lewis was able to get on top of Oleinik. Granted, Derek Lewis is a monster and just pounded him out with ground and pound, but it's not as if, like, if this fight goes to the ground and Spivak's in top position, like, he's done. Like, he's going to get submitted instantly. So even though there's like a wide submission grappling disparity here on paper, Oleinik a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Spivak a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt, I think Spivak could stay safe on top. But again, if this fight, for whatever reason, hits the ground and Spivak's on his back, that's where I would really start to sweat my bet as a Spivak better, right? So I'm going to pick him to win because I think he's the more well-rounded fighter, the better technical fighter here, and that's why he should be favored, but I don't feel great backing him at this current line, right? So it all comes down to the price, and the price is not right, in my opinion, to back Spivak here. Main event time, we got Chan Sung Jung taking on Dan Ige. We got action coming in on Ige. Not too much, but he's the favorite now nonetheless. I actually agree. I disagree rather. I think that Jung should be the favorite. I think that Jung is the better technical fighter here. I think he's more sharp on the feet. I think he's a better submission grappler. And I think that he has better cardio of the two. Ige actually very underrated as a striker. He came into the UFC just as like a grappler guy. Like that was his MO, was just, take you down and dominate you on the ground. But, he's actually improved his boxing quite a bit. He's not a great technical boxer, but he's shown much better counters here. He's obviously shown an immense amount of power in his hands. And he's one of these guys, young, improving, getting better. But I just think the zombie here has got him covered in every technical facet. I think, Ige could land takedowns in theory, but Zombie's got good overall takedown defense. And even if this fight goes to the ground, I just don't see Ige doing much with it. I think Zombie can work back up to his feet. And on the feet, I just think he's a better striker than Ige. So again, it's not the most confident pick because I have my concerns about Zombie. He has been stopped via strikes a few times. He's coming off a loss against Ortega, where he didn't exactly look great, just kind of got stifled at range, couldn't really get going, couldn't close the distance with frequency, and got hurt a couple times. So, you got one fighter who is more likely to have an arrow trending up based on the age. Ige's 29, Zombie's 34. But that said, I got to go with my eyes show me, and my eyes show me that Zombie is still the better fighter here. I'm going to pick him, but I agree with the odds being very competitive. And that will round us out for this card, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys' support. If you guys did like the video, please feel free to like, subscribe. And yeah, I want to wish you guys nothing but the best for the event. If you guys want to know what my bet is for the event and the breakdown, you can find out at dailyfanmma.com or betmma.tips /AnthonyS364. That'll do it. Quick podcast for this week. That's how I wanted to roll it out. I wish you guys nothing but the best. Take care.